I found this turtle shell. Before even the invention of pottery, people have been using turtle shells to make all sorts of different containers, tools, and other implements. It's a craft that's thousands and thousands of years old. It's a pretty intuitive craft, and no turtles have to be harmed in the making of this. I found this painted turtle shell by a high mountain pond. All I had to do was pick it up and wash it off. It's got some scutes that are shedding. Now, scutes are the individual segments of the shell. As the turtle grows, just like all reptiles, it has to shed its skin, and that includes the top layer of these scutes. There are so many different ways you can make a container or a bag. This will be kind of like a purse, I guess, with the top side of the shell opened and the bottom closed, and then a shoulder strap on it. And we'll just use a bit of buckskin for this. Now, when I say buckskin, I'm talking about brain-tanned hides of various types without the fur. In this case, this is pronghorn antelope that I'm using. The hide has been softened and preserved using brains and smoke. That's a traditional method that stems back thousands of years. Using brains or other emulsified fats to tan hides is one of the oldest methods of tanning that we know of, and it makes incredibly supple, soft, breathable fabric-like material. Now, it's not a true fabric because it's hide, it's not woven, but the structure of it looks and acts woven. It even has stretch to it, like it has built-in elastic. Really fascinating material, and we've had access to that for forever. For the sewing, we're going to use buckskin thong. Now, in this context, thong means string. It means cords of buckskin. Those are simply made by cutting a circle out of a piece of buckskin, then cutting that circle into a very fine spiral. You can then unravel that whole spiral. You can even it all out by soaking it and then stretching it and giving it a little bit of twist and letting it dry in the stretched position. That makes the thick spots thinner. It just evens everything out and kind of makes it so there's less weak spots. And it gives you quite a bit of extra length. So I really recommend you soak and stretch your buckskin thong. It looks like this turtle was ready for a molt at the time he expired. So we're going to remove all those loose scute covers. You can get under most of them with your fingernails. And you can see underneath that dry skin, the colors are much more vibrant. So this is really worth doing. Oh, you know, typical Friday for me, just peeling turtle shells in a forest grove. I guess some people think they have more important things to do. Removing those scute covers is really easy, especially if you have a knife, as shown here. You can get under the edges and lift up the whole thing. In some cases, a lot of the scutes had stubborn spots, so I just left what little bit remained there. It's not a big deal to have that on. It also helps to use the tip of the knife to score along the edge of each scute. That helps lift it up off of that edge, especially because some of the edges are really deeply creased into the shell. Be sure to do this on the top, bottom, and sides of the shell. Now with that part done, it's time to make the bag. Now you can see exactly how this whole setup is going to work. I'm pretty much making a separate buckskin bag that's going to go inside of the shell and be attached to it. In this way, the shell is really just acting as a protective cover for the bag itself, and a really cool decoration. I mean, I think it makes the bag really special to be inside that turtle shell. It'll be reserved for special items, delicate tools and stuff like that. Now I'm trying to keep this as simple as possible because making things shouldn't be daunting, and I was scared to work with buckskin for a very long time because I was so scared of ruining it. I'm using the most basic tools that I can with this. I'm not even using a pair of scissors. This bag is basically a long rectangle folded in half and sewn up the sides. Then it'll have a drawstring on the top. But to make that rectangular shape, I'm just using a leather awl to score the buckskin to make straight lines that I can cut along using the knife. And then I cut roughly along those lines using the knife just right on the ground. I don't mind that I'm cutting into the dirt here. The point of this is to show how simple you can make it. No fancy equipment needed. And if you don't have an awl on hand, you can use a nail, especially if you can sharpen up the tip a little bit. By practicing this way, it makes it much easier to switch to fully primitive tools if you wanted to. And that's something I'm really interested in. I want the length of this bag to be just a little bit longer than the shell itself. That way the drawstring top extends past the shell, so it's easier to access. With that rough shape cut out, I'm gonna punch all the holes now. Just using an awl, I'm able to punch all those holes, and sewing will be really easy. It just takes time. But it's not something to be daunted by. It's a simple process. I just decide a spacing that I want for my holes, and I try to stick with it as I work my way up the bag. And as you can see, I folded the bag in half to do all the punching. That way I'm going through 2 pieces of leather at once. That way I know the holes all line up. Now I'll show 2 methods of sewing buckskin here. The first method is using a needle. Here I have a rabbit bone needle. The one problem with rabbit bone is it's a little bit brittle, especially if the bones are cooked. That's just because it's so thin. These needles are pretty simple to make, especially if you have modern power tools. But they can also be ground to shape using stone, and the hole cut out using stone flakes. That'd have to be a different video. As I go along with this needle, it actually breaks because it takes a lot of force to pull a needle with buckskin cord attached to it through these holes, even going one hole at a time instead of two together. So you can see here, unfortunately, this needle broke at the eye. So what I switched to is this awl made from a beaver bone. Now, don't think there's anything special about beaver bones. It's just what I had on hand because I trap beavers every year, and I save some of the bones. Now, this awl is just made for stretching the holes that I've punched open a little bit wider so I can thread the buckskin straight through. And what's really important for this to work is the buckskin thong needs to have a tapered tip, so it's really thin at the tip. It's soft, it's not hard like a needle, so I can't just push it through. I need to finesse it through each hole, and the hole has to be wide enough. Having that tapered tip just makes that process so much easier. One by one, opening up those holes a bit, sending the buckskin through, do this running stitch all the way down. Now we'll actually run it back up too to make this seam really secure. I'm not using a welt here. A welt is another piece of leather that you put into that seam. So instead of sewing through 2 pieces of leather, you're sewing through 3. That reduces gaps even further, especially when the finished product has to stretch or something like that. You don't want holes in the side of the bag, you know? Since I omitted the welt, I'm going to instead double my running stitch just to make those edges more secure. And at the end of any of this sewing, I go back down one hole, send it through again, and then tie it off in the space there, as you can see in this video. Not quite sure how to explain that. Just watch, and I hope visually it makes sense to you. Now we have the shape of the bag, and it's time to make a drawstring top on it. You can see I've folded the top ½ inch or so on either side of the bag down and sewed it back in. This is to create a hem that I can run some more cordage through to make that drawstring. One alternative method is to punch a bunch of holes along the rim and to just send the cord through that, but it doesn't make as pretty of a drawstring, and it has to deal with a bit more friction. This method looks a lot neater, in my opinion. So I created that hem. Now we'll flip the inside out bag right side out. Then we punch some holes along the bottom of that hem and secure it using a single running stitch all the way around. It's not very hard to do. In my opinion, this process is easier than it looks. I was a little daunted at first. It's the first time I've done this method, but it worked pretty well. I didn't have to redo anything, and I say that's pretty good. Now I'm going to punch a couple of holes in the front of the bag, and these will be for the drawstring ends to come out of. I don't want them on the seam. I want them in the middle top of the bag. Carefully thread that string in through, and the nice thing about a single running stitch here is you have some gaps that you can use as break points for the string as you're feeding it through. By doing that, I was able to get the whole string around and through in just a few minutes. And there we go. That's a functional drawstring now. I really didn't like how narrow the opening of the turtle shell was. So to make that wider, without ruining the aesthetics of the shell, I'm going to cut the bottom part of it right along these scoot borders, this natural joint here. I can run a stone saw blade perfectly in there and score it deep enough that I can snap it off. It really just took a few minutes to do this, and it's good practice with these stone tools. For me, that's a valuable experience, and I like to do that as often as I can. I got it scored deep enough in no time at all, and it snapped pretty clean. And I was able to sand that edge using that same saw, grinding down all the rough, sharp bits from where it broke, and it left a good finish with no sharp edges. It turned out pretty nice. I'm really happy with it. Now you can see how it will look inside the shell, so the whole thing is coming together. Of course, now we need to attach it to the shell, and the way we're going to do that is by drilling holes through the shell, punching some holes through one side of the bag, and sewing the two together. To drill these holes, I'm using a primitive stone drill bit. It's hafted into a piece of red osier dogwood, glued with pine pitch glue. Now, this drill actually goes through the shell surprisingly fast, and I'm used to drilling through seashell with this little drill bit here, which is much harder than the bone that the turtle shell is made from. Now that those 4 holes are drilled, we're going to go back to the stone flake saws, and I'm going to use those to carve a groove in between each of the holes. That way, when I run the buckskin thong through, it's going to lay down nicely, not move around, and that way I can get it really nice and tight. I did a double running stitch here to make sure it's super secure, tied it off to itself, There's many different ways to tie it off, just do what feels secure to you. I kept everything really loose until all the thong was run through the shell and the bag, because it's really hard to get in there to run the end of that thong through. Keeping everything super loose and then tightening it afterwards makes that much more manageable. This has been a really fun project so far, and it's turned out great. Really well worth my time, and I think this is something so special, it'll be something I can pass down to my kids or my grandkids. Being able to build things like that, entirely nature-based, is really special to me. The biggest insult to this would be using something synthetic on it. So you won't see me doing that. There's not going to be any artificial sinew ties or any plastic or metal on this at all. With this coming along so well now, we just need to get a shoulder strap on it. Pretty much everything you see me do on this channel is really outdoors oriented, and I care a lot about that, and I care a lot about staying healthy and encouraging others to do that. And I recently started trying out AG1. It's a greens powder that dissolves in water, and it offers a whole ton of different benefits. I take it frequently, and they actually had a formulation change recently, so I've started using their new formula here. Really, it tastes just like the old stuff. And as far as greens powders go, this one tastes pretty good. Of course, it's not for the flavor. This has a whole host of nutrients, minerals, vitamins. It's got superfoods, live probiotic cultures. It's designed to help with digestion, cognitive function, and to help make up any nutrients that you may be lacking in your diet. I believe gut health is everything, and having live probiotic cultures and prebiotics to feed those cultures, and having a good diet overall with high nutrition and a lot of diversity, that leads to a healthy gut, and I believe that leads to a healthy life. So I feel really great using it. I have a lot of energy. I even mix it into my protein shakes every week when I work out. If you're interested in trying this out, you can find the link for it in the description. All right, back to our turtle shell. This will be just long enough to tie on to my haversack, which is really the goal of it, or to tie onto my belt, whichever. It's just enough of something to hang on to, carry, tie on to something when you need to. And that way, whatever materials or tools you have in this are always ready to grab. So to make this is pretty simple. We're just taking some more buckskin, and I'm going to trim off all the rough edges so I have a somewhat round big piece that I can cut in that same spiral fashion to make the thong earlier. I'm making enough strap material that I can braid it. That braiding helps get all the stretch out of it and gives it a lot of strength and a lot of substance. It ends up making a pretty nice strap in the end. I'm using the same exact method as before, using the knife planted into the stump. You can see the cuts are a little bit uneven. Luckily, it doesn't matter all that much. And if you want it more even, use scissors and make it more even. I'm just trying to show this the simplest way possible. With that buckskin ribbon cut, now I'm going to triple it up on itself. So I have 3 pieces of the same length. And then, just like the thong earlier, wad this up, put it in some water, get it all saturated, then stretch it and let it dry. If I try to braid this wet, it's going to dry very, very loose, and it'll have a lot of stretching. So I'm pre-wetting it, stretching it till dry, and that makes sure almost all the stretch is out. Now that it's all dry, to braid this, I simply tie it to a tree and get going on the braiding.
Let this be your crash course on braiding. 3 strands, always have 2 in one hand, 1 in the other. Pass the one on the far left into the middle to your other hand. Then pass the one on the far right to the middle and to your other hand. And just keep repeating that motion. That's all braiding is. There's no reason any man should not know how to braid. Make your braids tight, especially with buckskin, because it's got some stretch and it's going to loosen over time.
With the full length of it braided now, we need to attach it to the turtle shell. We're using the sides of the shell here as the attachment points. I didn't tie a knot in the end of the braids or anything like that. It just kind of tapers out and into unbraided buckskin. Now I'm going to loop one end through the shell and make that tag end parallel with the rest. Then I'm going to use just a piece of thin buckskin thong here, same hide the braided stuff is from. Here's my method of tying it all together. Lay a loop parallel to the thick material, and with the long end of the loop, start wrapping the loop itself and around all that material, just as you can see here. Wrap it all the way up the loop, then tuck the tail through the loop, then pull the other tail end to cinch that loop down. Trim off those tag ends and it should be really secure, especially if you did it nice and tight. Because buckskin has some stretch, you gotta make it tight. Do the exact same thing on the other side here, and make sure there's no twists in your braided cord before you tie it all. And there we have it. That's our finished strap. I think it makes a really attractive looking, strong strap. So I'm pretty happy with the results. I don't think I would do it any other way. Looks like you could even wear this as a necklace if you wanted. I have seen similar bags made with smaller turtle shells as medicine pouches, meant to be worn like this. So that's really the completed project, and now I'm going to show you what I actually use this for. So I'm working on a pair of buckskin moccasins for myself. I just made a pair for my toddler. He's a year and a half old, and he loves his moccasins, loves running around the yard in them. They turned out really well. They're the first pair of actual brain tan moccasins I've ever made, and it really boosted my confidence in using brain tan as a whole, as did making this bag. So without being too long-winded about this is going to be a repair kit for moccasins. I think my next YouTube video, or at least one coming up very soon, will be about making my first pair of moccasins. So this kit is going to have two stitching awls, one made of bone and one that I forged. It has a couple pieces of elk backstrap sinew because that's nice and long and I can pull threads off of that for stitching on low profile patches to my moccasins as I wear through the soles. Here is a flake of chert. That'll be used for cutting tasks like cutting buckskin to the right size, and then of course a few pieces of buckskin. They'll probably go up at the top to protect everything else. I can cut lace from the buckskin or just cut patches out of it. And having it all contained within this turtle shell, make sure it's all safe. I know it's not going to be rattling around really bad, dulling that stone flake. And soon I'll get some more bone needles made, and I'll have those in a little bone vial or something like that. And I'll put that in this kit as well. And well, there you have it. It's the Moccasin Repair Kit Turtle Bag. Alright, thank you so much for watching this video. I'm trying to focus more on long-form videos lately, and I have one more thing to say before we sign off here. Odds are you've never been to a primitive skills gathering here in the western states. There's a lot of them. I've only been to a couple so far, but I'm now a teacher at Rabbit Stick, Fire to Fire, Between the Rivers, and there's many others, like Elkhorn, which is run by my friend Kelly, and I'm spacing it on the rest of the names because I have not been to those ones. But I'm trying to teach at as many as I can now. That's my goal, at least. So if you want to be updated about all that, follow my other socials and join my mailing list. That's where I will announce which gatherings I'm going to and going to be a teacher at if you ever want to come meet me in person and take my classes. It's June right now as I film this, and next week I'm going to Fire Primitive Skills Gathering in Tabiona, Utah. So it's a little late to sign up for that, and I am definitely planning on teaching at Rabbit Stick here in Idaho. So you'll see me there in September. Registration closes on that one fast. I really love meeting people who watch and value my videos. So I hope to see you at some of those gatherings, and thank you so much for watching.